Please join me in some quiet reflection as I read Judson Church's land acknowledgement. Place is more than just a piece of land. It is a piece of who we are. For too long, we have associated this place where Judson Church sits with our European American roots, forgetting the people who called this place home for centuries before us. Minnesota Makoche, land where the waters reflect the sky, and specifically, this part of the Twin Cities is the ancestral home of the Dakota Wakaput people. It is home to their creation stories. It is where they hunted, fished, harvested, and cared for the land, raised families, celebrated life and community, and buried their dead. We acknowledge that it was at the hands of European Americans and the federal government of the United States that this land was acquired by treaties and those treaties subsequently broken, resulting in the forced removal of the Wakaput from their ancestral lands. We acknowledge that Dakota people were imprisoned in concentration camps, suffered starvation, disease, and forced assimilation because of the actions of the government we, the people, sanctioned. We remember and recognize the history of this land. We recognize that Dakota, Anishinaabe, and other indigenous peoples live here today. They are our neighbors and fellow citizens. It is our obligation to do better by our neighbors, to stand with them, and to learn from them as we seek to create a community that sees the Creator's face in everything. Good morning. I'm Barbara York. And I'm your worship leader today. And we have a guest speaker today with us, Olympian, Nobel Peace, wrong page. It's on the front of your bulletin. We have Buff Grace today with us, the Director of Faith Networks with Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. I just said we need to slow down and enunciate, and I get up to roll. There's coffee in the back if you forgot to get one, or you want to get one, or later on need one. They're straight in the back. Restrooms are up through the Ann Judson room, which means that if you go out those doors, turn immediately right, go up the little stairs, and then turn left. And then proceed for about 50 yards. There are restrooms available. Through that door downstairs, through this door, a little up the stairs. Notice in your bulletin there are several new announcements. As you go through today, if you're bored with me, feel free to read those now. Other than that, we have a wonderful speaker with us today, and I would like you now to go to your opening hymn, which is in your bulletin.
And so, the question of the day is, what is your favorite ice cream? To get y'all started, mine's licorice and pistachio. And we have a special treat today. Wendell is going to be singing for us. Yay! And so I hope you will enjoy this. And remember that, keep on singing.
I want to say just one word about this song. When I get this right.
Right into it.
Is that better? A little.
You're good. Put your lips right on it.
When I get to the phrase or the sentence, I picked my heavy burdens up, it will not be sung heavily. Because Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So instead of singing it, I walk today, instead of saying, I pick my heavy burden up. It's light, so I'll be singing, I pick my heavy burden up. In days of long ago, I wandered down each path he knew, with reverent step and a slow. Those little ways, they have not changed. A sweet peace fills the air. I walk today where Jesus walked and feel his presence there. My pathway led through Bethlehem, on memories ever sweet. Those little hills of Galilee that knew those childish feet. The Mount of Olives hallowed seas that Jesus knew before. I saw the mighty Jordan roll as in the hill of Calvary. I climb the hill of Calvary. I climb the hill of Calvary, where on the cross he died. I walk today where Jesus walked, and felt him close to me.
Wendell told me this morning that he is 90 years old, and I told him I want to be like him when I grow up. I'm Carla McGray, for those of you who are new. I came to Judson, and some of you have heard this story, but I came to Judson by way of a Native American friend and her Irish husband who invited me to a Jewish Passover dinner at Grace Baptist Church. And it stuck, and I stayed. I decided this might be a place I could be comfortable. I've been thinking about the fact that we've lost so many dear friends these last months at Judson. In addition to those friends, Willie and I have personally lost 4 very special friends. One being Greg Lehman, who's a member of this church. I think we each deal with grief in our own way, and one of my ways of dealing with grief is to write. And so I've written a story that I want to share with you that occurred on this past May 21st, just a few weeks ago. It all began with Willie watching public television during funding week for an opera lover. The enticement of tickets to an Andre Bocelli concert with a donation was too much to resist. It's fun to go back in time, or interesting to go back in time, and trace the thread of events that lead up to a moment of grace. It was a love of opera, a desire to be a dedicated contributor, and a moment of weakness that planted us in a crowd of 20,000 people milling our way slowly toward the door of the Target Center. We arrived at 6:30 for a 7:30 concert, believing we would be in our seats with plenty of time. One would think that a venue that hosts thousands of people on a regular basis for Timberwolves and Lynx games would have traffic management down to a science. But no, it took a long time to get to the door of the center. Then security guards monitored the number of people who could board the escalator to the upper level. Then we looped around and around in airport navigation style, passed through metal detectors, did security bag checks, ticket checks, and no assistance on directions. The crowd was getting crankier and grumpier as they checked their watches. We found our section and entered the darkened arena at 8 p.m. to hear Bocelli already performing. Stumbling down the poorly lit stairs, we could see it would be impossible to get to our seats without disrupting a row of people. Looking to our right, we spotted a section of 3 empty rows of about 10 seats. "Let's just sit over here quickly and we can move at intermission," I whispered to Willie. We bent over and scooted over not to block the view of the people in the row behind us, and went to the far end of the row, figuring we would move as needed. We were just grateful to be inside and finally able to sit down. As we did, we nodded to the couple behind us and excused ourselves immediately. We were swept away with Nessun Dorma, a soprano accompanying Andre Bocelli, and an enormous orchestra. At the first break in the performance, we asked the couple behind us if they were public television ticket buyers like us. "Oh no, we are Elisa and Mike from Alexandria. We love opera and are celebrating our 35th wedding anniversary this weekend." We whispered congratulations, and then we all went back to watching the concert. At one point, Lisa and Mike asked if they minded if we moved to the row in front of us because they needed to stretch their legs. Even though they were 20 years younger than we were, arthritis was bothering them both. Oddly, no one ever came to sit in this section of empty rows. The section was all ours, along with Lisa and Mike, our own private box. Bocelli sang a favorite aria from the Pearl Fishers and was further accompanied by a baritone, another soprano, contemporary dancers. It was gorgeous. After 3 encores, Bocelli closed with Time to Say Goodbye, holding his long notes twice as long as opera singers half his age, taking our breath away. As we stood up to leave, we wished Lisa and Mike a wonderful anniversary celebration, then joined the throngs of people, now much less crabby, soothed by Bocelli, to make our way to meet Margot and Bob in the lobby. Once we found each other, we mutually decided to have a drink to let the traffic clear before heading home. We crossed the street to the Lowe's Hotel and made our way into the bar. It was pretty crowded in front, so we worked our way to a separate room in the back, and who was there but Lisa and Mike? What a coincidence. Join us, we have plenty of seats here. We said, are you sure? It's your anniversary, we don't want to interrupt. No, join us. We would love it. With that invitation, the guys decided to head back to the bar to get our drink orders, and Mike joined them. So we 3 women settled in and began to get acquainted. We talked about the concert and the crowd. At one point, Lisa said, we have been through a lot, so it is really special to be here. I had a serious injury. Mike has survived colon cancer twice. Our 2 sons have had serious health issues. We decided to celebrate our anniversary with the theater last night and the concert tonight. My goodness, these 2 very nice people had been through a lot. Just then, the men returned with our drinks, sat down, and our group broke into smaller conversation exchanges. I looked across the group, and Mike and I locked eyes. Why I said what I did, I don't know. Lisa said, you have survived colon cancer twice. It was as if the words were meant to be said. Yes, the first time at age 32, our son had just been born. It was very scary. The second time was in my late 40s. Oh my God, was all I could say. This got the others' attention, and everyone became focused on this conversation. Mike and Lisa told us their story and the story of their son's colonitis and colon issues. Even though we live in Alexandria, we did all of our care here in Minneapolis. One doctor saved us all, Dr. Greg Lehman. I gasped. My heart was immediately overwhelmed. These 2 people knew our dear beloved friend that we lost to prostate cancer last November. Tears began to flood my eyes, and Willie's too. I told them Greg was one of our most beloved friends. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Then we were all in tears. Lisa and Mike continued to tell us of the compassion and love that Greg showed their family, his incredible diagnostic skills, his help getting their son into the Mayo Clinic. It was surreal, mystical, as if Greg were right there in the center of our circle. We loved him, Lisa said, and our whole family wept when we learned he had died. He helped our son with his severe colon issues. He counseled all of us, guided us with such love and care. We will never forget him. We continued to share Greg's stories for a long time, wiped our eyes, laughed, and held the memory of this man close. In the movie Coco, a character says, as long as someone remembers you, you are alive and in our midst. We sat that evening with 2 strangers, 2 out of 19,998 individuals that we could possibly have met that night. But we met Lisa and Mike. We remembered together, and it was beautiful, powerful. Greg was alive and in our midst. It was palpable. Sometimes we are in the flow of a presence greater than we are. We are simply welcome to dwell in the mystery. We have no idea what is coming. Some might call it a visitation. I do. We just have to be open to grace when it happens, be in awe of the experience, and accept it was meant to be. Amen.
about now? Do you want me to, oh, how about now? Thank you so much, Carla. That was beautiful. I am Carolyn Kolovitz. I'm the Spiritual Formation Director here at Judson. So I oversee things like the children's program that happens downstairs during the Sunday service. If any of you happen to read the Wednesday Connections email that came out, we are going to be losing our beloved child care staff at the end of this month. They're actually, the whole family, Shafali and her family, are moving to Germany. So we're going to be hearing from Shafali's daughter that has helped with childcare for many years. The last Sunday in June, we'll be hearing from her and then having a celebration for the family after the service. So we hope you all can come. And if you know of any people that would be interested in joining our staff for Sunday childcare, please come up and see me. All right, great. So one of my favorite things, my favorite thing about summer is being in the water. And I get in a pool or a lake, or especially the ocean when I can, any chance that I can get. And this past week, I was paying attention to it's a very common metaphor, but paying attention to how floating in the water is like prayer, it's like meditation, it's like being in the creative flow. Because when we float, we can't grasp onto the water, right? And just like in meditation, we can't grasp onto our minds and force the thoughts to stop, right? We have so many writers and creative people in our congregation who know that you can't grasp onto that creative, sit at the page and I need a new idea right now. That's not how that works. And for the faithful, you can't grasp on to God or to spirit. You can't force a moment of grace like what Carla so beautifully described, for example. What you have to do, our bodies in the water have this instinct of stiffening, and so you have to bypass that instinct and relax into the water. Like the writer shows up at the page, and maybe their habit is to just start writing and see what flows out, see if an idea comes. Like the faithful shows up in prayer and relaxes in that faith that Spirit is encompassing them and noticing what arises with that faith. Just like we show up to meditation, knowing that the intrusive thoughts are going to come, but just relaxing into those brief moments of stillness and quiet. So I'm going to read for you a poem along these lines, and then we'll enter into our own quiet. This is a poem by Philip Booth, describing his little daughter's first swim lesson in the water. Lie back, daughter. Let your head be tipped back in the cup of my hand gently, and I will hold you. Spread your arms wide, lie out on the stream, and look high at the gulls. A dead man's float is face down. You will dive and swim soon enough where this tide water ebbs to the sea. Daughter, believe me, when you tire on the long thrash to your island, lie up and survive. As you float now, where I held you and let go, remember when fear cramps your heart what I told you. Lie gently and wide to the light year stars. Lie back and the sea will hold you. Let's take a moment now to lie back, to close our eyes, and simply gently soften to our breath, soften our awareness to our breath. Imagine for a moment that you're floating in a sea of spirit, of inspiration or grace. Notice what happens in your body as you imagine yourself floating in that sea. It's okay if you stiffen or resist. That's human nature. And now just put out the question, bypassing your thinking mind. What is it that holds you? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and find the small slips of paper in your pews and write down a hope or a wish, a blessing, a gratitude, something that you carry in your heart that you wish to be shared in the spirit of this community. And you can put it in the large wooden bowl up here. And if there's something that you would like to be kept private and prayed over privately, you can put it in the smaller metal bowl. We're grateful for all medical staff and helpers for their kindness and expertise.
For Laura Knudsen, hoping to recover her voice in time for gigs next week.
Floating in mind and in body is fabulous.
Gratitude for the loving support of friends in every area of life.
Love for the sweetness of nature, family, and friends.
Prayers for those challenged to maintain sobriety and for their families.
I hope we all move forward with love and understanding and deepening friendship.
I am so grateful for my family, Judson, and fairly good health.
Grateful for all the talented people in our Judson community.
Gratitude for soothing, beautiful music to enfold us and hold us.
For Deb, Gina, and water protectors.
For Ben Williams, shocked yesterday upon finding his father dead.
Bless all those who work for peace and justice.
For Jenny, Sydney's sister in Spokane, for alleviation of back pain.
I am thankful for the blessing of God's grace.
For Tara Uchi, one of the people who have been attending here with Craig, is seeking medical assistance in Japan. She's not able to find help here in the States.
Thankful for the 5 old hymns sung and played this morning. They take me back to childhood in good ways. Let's just take a moment now to notice what we've heard, what's in the hearts and souls of those sitting among us. Amen.
Prayer is sitting in the silence until it silences, choosing gratitude until we are grateful, praising God until we ourselves are a constant act of prayer. May your prayers be heard, whether they've been spoken, held inside, written, or given up for silent prayer. Amen. Our speaker today is Buff Grace. You may recognize him, he's been here before. He is the director of Faith and Networks, part of the Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light. One of his quotes is, "You don't find that climate and faith go together in many fields. It's usually one or the other. But Buff has found a way to lead the MNIPL, easier to say Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, but he's helped lead them through this because of his participation is because of the nonprofit's commitment to both of these imperatives, blending climate and faith. He had a remarkable birth and grew up not too far, about 2 hours from Clarence Jordan's Integrated Farm, the man who wrote Cotton Patch Bible. Clarence was in Telbotton, Georgia, and Buff grew up in Ackworth, Georgia, a little outside of Atlanta. And he was greatly influenced as he grew up on a horse farm there and was very aware of the earth and had great respect for it. He's been river canoeing, he's been to New Zealand. He has lived his organic gardener close to the land life, whether it be here, New Zealand, canoeing in the Boundary Waters and in Canada. He embodies that witness to the earth. Buff?
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me here. I want to offer the text today from the Gospel of Luke using the translation that Clarence Jordan did. Clarence was a New Testament Greek scholar, and he translated the scriptures into kind of what we would call the 20th century vernacular South or Georgia. And our text comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 12, starting at verse 22. Jesus said to his students, "That's why I'm telling you not to worry about your physical life, what you'll eat, or for your body, what you'll wear. For life is much more than eating, and the body is more than clothing. Take a look at the crows. They don't plant, they don't harvest, they don't store things away in cribs or barns, yet God cares for them. You are considerably more valuable than birds. Besides, which one of you, by fretting and fuming, can make himself 1 inch taller? Well, if your worrying can't change a little thing like that, why wear yourself out over anything else? Now, take a look at the lilies, how they do no knitting or sewing. Yet I'm telling you that not even Solomon in all his finery was ever dressed up like one of them. Well then, if God so outfits a plant that one day is growing in the field and the next is used for fuel, he'll do even more for you, you spiritual runts. The people of the world go tearing around after all these things, but your Father knows you need them. So set your heart on his movement, and such things will be fully supplied. Stop being so scared, a little flock. Your Father has decided to make you responsible for the movement. Sell what you own and give it with no strings attached. Make yourselves wallets that don't wear out, an unsurpassed spiritual treasure which thieves don't plunder nor worms consume. For your treasure and your heart are wrapped up together." Thanks for inviting me to preach this morning. Thank you for welcoming me and for that introduction. I never know exactly what to say about myself when I come to congregations to preach. Have you ever been in that situation where you have to think about how you should be introduced? What from your life you might offer as a reason that people would listen to you? What do you say about yourself? How do you know what is important? I wonder how Jesus would be introduced. Imagine you arrive at church and you pick up the leaflet and you look to see who's filling in for Pastor Travis, and it's Jesus from Nazareth. Jesus Christ is the leader of a schismatic sect of first century Judaism. Before developing his faith healing practice, he was a carpenter's apprentice and volunteered on a speaking circuit around Galilee. He has a master's in parable studies from the University of Palestine at Tiberias. He is based out of Calvary, but being recently resurrected, he travels globally, conveying the Spirit. For fun, he likes fishing and walking on water. Summer at our organization, Minnesota Interfaith Power and Light, is a time for interns. So I've had the pleasure of spending a lot of time with folks in their 20s. It helps me remember the anxiety that I felt in those years. What will my life be? How will I make a living? Who am I attracted to? Who is attracted to me? What do I value, and how can I live out those values in the world? Essentially, what story will I tell with my life? Jesus said, do not worry about what you will eat or what you will wear. But what about who you will be? What about the daunting freedom to create your own life? Even Jesus had to wrestle with that question. How exciting and also scary it can be to have a blank page before you on which to write your story, the plot of your life. It is like the open plot of ground in early spring. What will you sow? What will it grow? What will you harvest from your plot? Another first century Palestinian rabbi, Rabbi Hillel, asked, if I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? I heard the theme at Judson for June is rest and reflection. At MNIPL, we often invite people to reflect on their personal story. Who am I for myself? As Rebecca Solnit has written, stories are your life. We are stories. A free person tells her own story. A valued person lives in a society in which her story has a place. This is the first step in our test plot, the personal story. But we have to grow beyond this. We have to move beyond our small ego self to a more mature, fuller, shared story. Because, as Rabbi Hillel asked, if I am only for myself, what am I? One way to move in this direction, to thicken our test plot beyond ourselves, is to notice that our story is less about what we have acquired and done than what we have been given and what we have received. Imagine if our short bios were written in this way. Buff got to know a man who was in prison for 30 years. He has heard music that made him cry with joy. He has been so hungry he passed out. Buff has paced hours in the surgery waiting room, and he's been alone silent in the woods for weeks, and he almost drowned once. He failed to care for his grandmother as she died. But later, he showed up for his friend who had dementia. What if you told your story using the stepping stones of the things you had received in life? If God so gives to the lilies and the crows, how much more will God give to you? Reflecting on what a person has received reorients their story from me to we. And it opens us more and more to the shared story, the plot of our people in our generation, which is the story of the Spirit in our day. This was the spiritual insight and maturity of Clarence Jordan's reflection. Clarence was born in South Georgia in 1912. Sounds like you know a bit about the Reverend Jordan. But in case you don't, you know he returned after getting a doctorate in New Testament Greek to Georgia to create what he called a test plot for God. And this test plot was a farm in the Jim Crow South that would sustain a community of both black and white farmers, members all living together as equal, whose wealth would be shared in common as the early followers of Jesus had shared their wealth. Clarence did not walk any of the famous civil rights marches of the 50s and 60s, but his vision, the Coronita Farm and the people that came to it, answered the local forms of white supremacy and its brutalities with the same nonviolence renowned at Selma and Birmingham and Greensboro and Atlanta and Memphis, all across the South. And Clarence saw what Spirit was doing in his day, he and those that shared that plot, and they responded to God's movement in their time. Clarence let his own story bleed into and become God's story. He set his heart on that story, and he received its fulfillment. A more recent member of Koinonia, Joyce Holliday, said, "We are lucky to have the legacy of such a man. For those who are hesitant to embrace Christ's sufferings, we have an example. For those of us who struggle as part of a young community of Christ to see our place in history, we have this encouragement. Clarence's vision has endured." And another person summed up his life in this way: "I think that it's possible to live a life of integrity, faith, courage, loving kindness, humor, and know that God will come through for you. That is the heart of the peace that is proclaimed in Luke's gospel today." Clarence said, "In the early days, Christianity was not an organization, it was a movement. And if Christianity is to have any of its former power, it must cease to be an organization and again become a movement." What is God's movement in our day? Spirit is crying out to us to reckon with our economic systems and how out of sync they are with God's natural world. Our industrial and technological prowess has created enormous wealth and abundance, but most of that is concentrated in the hands of a few, the inheritance of stolen land and stolen labor. And all our tearing around has still left people who are hungry and without health care and in need. Our burning fossil fuels has led to global climate change and its consequences of floods and droughts and superstorms and heat waves and oceans turning acidic. And 1 million species are now threatened with extinction. That is reason enough to worry. But what Clarence's vision shows us, and what we find when we pray and reflect on our story and how it bleeds into God's story, is that we don't need to worry. That if we will let ourselves become part of God's story, we have nothing to worry about. And all those things will be added to us that we so desperately yearn and need. Clarence described it as metanoia. Maybe you know that Greek word. It's often translated in our scriptures as repentance. And the way Clarence talked about it was just a beautiful way. He described a caterpillar yearning to become a butterfly, going into that deep, dark cocoon. And I used a different Greek word for that, metamorphosis. He said, hey, that caterpillar, as we all know, becomes a butterfly. But the metanoia part of that is that that caterpillar, if you can imagine yourself being that little caterpillar, is probably pretty worried, probably desperately worried in that dark cocoon, not knowing what's going to happen on the other side. And yet, the spring, the season, the warmth, what God's doing in the world, wants that caterpillar to become a butterfly. As just a part of that much larger scheme of what's going on in the universe. And he said repentance is often thought of as meaning, well, time that we feel sorry about getting caught at something we shouldn't have done. But he said that's not at all what metanoia is. He said it doesn't have a bit of sorry in it. Not one single scrap of sorry in it. Instead, it's absolutely chock full of happiness. It's the happiest thing you will ever do, he said, is to align your life and discover that your story is being told through God's story, and God's story is being told through you. And that the movement, which cannot be stopped, the Spirit's movement, which absolutely nothing can hold back, that love of God for the universe and for each of us, is the story that ultimately will be told. And the question for us will be, did we receive it? Could we participate in it? Did we have the grace to be grateful for it and to live in it?
Amen.
Thank you, Buff. While the ushers take the offering, we'll sing it as you're seated. Victoria was number 99, Abide With Me. It's in your hymnal, verses 1 through 3. Is anybody making announcements this morning? I hope you've taken note of that there are several to read in your bulletin that you can take home with you. I want to thank Buff and Wendell and Jim for their music today. Buff, you were very well behaved. I'll let Travis know. There's still coffee in the back. I hope you'll stay and talk to each other and share the peace that you've been given today, and trust that there's peace in your life coming. And so, in blessing, may our God sit, may our soul sit in God in true rest. May our soul stand in God in sure strength. And may our soul be naturally rooted in God in endless love. Go forth and love.